Howdy friendos, my name is Stuart, and welcome to a video that I'm not quite certain how to quantify. Today we are going to compare two characters who on the surface have no similarities, but in reality have many parallels. To quickly catch people up who aren't aware, or if you click on videos without reading the title or thumbnail, this video is going to be comparing Broly from the Dragon Ball series to the main character of the Star Wars trilogy, Rey Palpatine. Normally I would focus on the D&D alignments of certain characters, and if you're interested in that, I've already actually done this in a crossover I did with Masako X, and I sort of tackled Rey a few years ago. Spoilers abound, you've been warned. As a quick recap, Broly has a long history with the Dragon Ball fandom. Back when the original DBZ anime was being produced, series veteran Takao Koyama worked on a one-shot movie called Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan. In it, he introduced two new characters called Broly and his father Paragus. According to the original film, Broly was born with a power level of over 10,000. To give this number some context, the average adult human male has a power level of 5. The average Frieza Force soldier has a power level of, say, 1500, and Nappa, Vegeta's bodyguard, an elite of the Saiyans, had a power level of only 4,000. Needless to say, a newborn with this much latent ability would grow up to be something pretty remarkable. Not only was he born insanely strong, Broly also was a member of the Saiyan race, which had the potential to transform into something even stronger. Strong enough to challenge the gods of their universe. However, Broly is separated even further from his peers by having unique transformation all of his own. Like many other Saiyans in the series, not only did Broly gain the ability to turn Super Saiyan, he also had the unique capability of turning into a form called the Legendary Super Saiyan, raising his power levels even further. Without logic, reason, or even training, Broly's power level skyrockets into godlike territories. Broly as a baby was nearly a victim to the destruction of the Saiyan homeworld. However, just before his planet exploded, he managed to save himself and his father through his insane abilities. As he grew up, he became a rage-filled monster that eventually resulted in the destruction of an entire galaxy. Soon after that, he fell in battle against Goku and his friends. This version of Broly received mixed reviews and is extremely divisive, even among Dragon Ball fans. On one hand, the concept of a Super Saiyan villain is interesting and unique, considering in the series that power had been exclusive to our protagonists, especially at the time when the concept was novel and fresh. On the other hand, Broly himself was boring. He ceased to be a character when his only drive and motivation was killing Goku, a character that he reasonably shouldn't have had any connection to. Even his voice actor hated playing the character because most of his lines consisted of screaming, "Kakarot!" There were more Dragon Ball films throughout the years, and Broly showed up a few more times, but otherwise the fandom accepted that Broly was going to be delegated to non-canon movie projects and video games. That was until December 14th, 2018, where a new movie was released called Dragon Ball Super: Broly. Written by series creator Akira Toriyama, this movie was made with the intent of adding this character into the series proper, building upon Takao's work and adjusting it to fit better within the Dragon Ball universe. The changes were subtle, but extremely effective. Broly was still born with an incredible latent ability, and was suspected to be the legendary Super Saiyan from their myths. However, rather than Broly choosing to leave the planet as it was exploding, he was then exiled directly by King Vegeta. His father Paragus then hijacked a ship to go find him. When they landed on the distant planet, their equipment was destroyed, stranding both him and Paragus on the alien planet, where they then trained, hunted, and survived until they were eventually found by two Frieza Force grunts. They were then brought back before Frieza, challenged against our heroes, and then were defeated. Unlike the first Broly, this one was almost universally loved by the Dragon Ball fandom. It went on to become the most popular Dragon Ball film by far, with high praises coming from both critics and fans alike, many citing the fact that our titular hero now had a solid motivation, a personality, and backstory that is both sympathetic and fits well within Dragon Ball's lore. There's so much more to this character's history, but we should go ahead and take a look at the other character in this analysis. Take it away, Devil!
Hello. I am Literature Devil. I produce video essays on my channel discussing the current state of comics, movies, and the writing process. Some of my most popular and well-received videos examined Rey Palpatine from the new Star Wars movies, which is why I was brought on for this analysis. To summarize Rey into an easily digestible video format, here are the broad strokes from her introductory story from Star Wars The Force Awakens. By the way, we will not be counting any supplementary or tertiary material, so no Star Destroyer VR training and no off-screen mentors. In other words, no cheating. If it's not in the movies, it doesn't count. Rey begins her journey on a desert planet called Jakku. There, she grows up alone, fending for herself as a scavenger. She finds a lost droid and befriends it. They encounter a stranger that pulls them into an adventure. They encounter a hero from the original trilogy and help him out of a bind. they decide to team up and fight against the bad guys. They find another artifact from the original trilogy. Rey gets captured by a powerful villain. While being interrogated by said powerful villain, she accidentally overpowers the man using the Force, and then escapes using the Force for the first time. She then fights the villain who should be much more powerful than her. And the first movie ends with her leaving the main cast to search for Luke Skywalker. And while most of these elements are not inherently a broken concept for Star Wars, her abilities and powers enhance exponentially throughout the series to the point where she overpowers Luke Skywalker in a one-on-one fight, and then prances off to destroy the entirety of the Sith nearly single-handedly. Nearly all of the important elements for Rey are found in her introductory story. The other two movies branch off into their own journeys, but we will come back to them later. Right now, let's compare. Looking at Broly, we can draw many parallels between him and Rey. Both Rey and Broly were raised on lawless alien planets, Rey on Jakku and Broly on Vampa. There they learned a plethora of different skills, including survival and fighting, although Rey also learned piloting and mechanical engineering somewhere. They are then drawn into the adventure of the story by an ex-soldier, Lemo and Chilai for Broly and Finn for Rey. Along the adventure, they gain unbelievable powers by fighting with other characters, Broly fighting Goku or Vegeta, and Rey putting in all the cheat codes, pulling the lightsaber away from Kylo. They both lose their mentor/father figures, Paragus for Broly and Han Solo for Rey. They both impress and bewilder all the other pre-established characters with their amazing abilities, Broly easily impressing Frieza and Rey shocking Luke Skywalker. They progress and power up without logic or reason to the point where they are basically gods. For example, Broly fighting Super Saiyan God Goku and Vegeta, and Rey fighting Palpatine. And as a fun side note, they also get a distinct color scheme that makes them stand out from the rest of the cast, Broly's green and Rey's yellow lightsaber. While the details of this journey are innately different, they do share many of the core elements of their stories. Broly is universally loved and has a wonderful voice, while Rey is, to put it nicely, divisive.
To begin with, Rey is in the Star Wars universe, where they have different rules on power levels and power scaling. While the Jedi and the Sith are definitely a cut above the rest in their respective universes, Force-sensitive characters are not gods. They can't do anything completely reality-destroying. Even the most powerful of Force users didn't do anything except, shoot lightning. Especially in the context of Disney-era Star Wars because, like I mentioned in my Kylo and Rey video, Disney did away with huge chunks of the canon. However, working off the Disney Star Wars, Rey is exceptional in her universe to the point of unbelievability. Without any training, knowledge, or even foreshadowing, Rey outshined the other extremely well-trained and naturally gifted Force user, Kylo Ren, even though we just saw her get utterly dominated by him in the scene before. Without provocation or indication, she just suddenly gets better because the plot demanded it. And this is where the problems with Rey begin.
Now, you may be thinking, but Broly has the same issues. Broly, without any proper training or provocation, was able to, in all of his movies, utterly dominate the other characters. However, this argument proves invalid when you consider that the Dragon Ball universe has a precedence for this sort of phenomena. Consider all the way back into the Namek saga starting in 1990. Vegeta started pouting about an ancient legend concerning a warrior who was more powerful than any other in the universe, a creature that was only ever born once every 1,000 years. The legendary Super Saiyan, a creature whose power knows no equal. When Goku first turned Super Saiyan against Frieza, everyone just assumes that the legend was referring to Goku. But no, Broly was that prophesied child. Broly is the son of destiny. For all intents and purposes, Broly is the chosen one. Not only that, in both the good and the bad Broly movies, Broly had a mentor and a caregiver. He wasn't raised by himself on an alien planet to fend for himself and somehow survived. In other words, he didn't just survive because he's just awesome. When Toriyama rewrote the Broly movie to fit his canon, he realized it was completely unrealistic to expect a baby to pull himself and his father off an exploding planet with his Mary Sue powers alone. So he trapped them on an alien world before Planet Vegeta's destruction. Because even in the universe of Dragon Ball, where characters could casually destroy planets, a character who was just awesome and didn't need no mentor wasn't believable.
In the Star Wars universe, the Force is used to justify a lot of actions and decisions from the main characters, especially the Force-sensitive characters. The Force is vague on purpose in order to make the plot advanced as needed. However, even the Force has a few rules that have been consistent in all the movies and canon so far. And that rule is, in order to manipulate the Force, you need to have training. The powers don't just reveal themselves to you, you need knowledge, wisdom, and spiritual attunement to back it up. In the original trilogy, the only Force power we ever see Luke do with his minimal training is guiding his aim when he attacks the Death Star. Even Anakin, the presumed most Mary Sue of all the Skywalkers, only ever used instinct to guide him in pod racing and Jar Jarring his way through the Trade Federation ship. Looking at Rey's first use of the Force, we see her completely resist and overthrow another Force user who was attempting to mentally pull information from her mind, a power so advanced we've only ever seen it done before by other Sith Masters. Then, immediately afterwards, we see her dominate and overthrow the will of a stormtrooper with another advanced technique that she's never even heard of before. We might be able to believe that Rey could resist the mind pulling. Whatever. Maybe she rolled a good will save and instinctively got defensive. We've seen people do amazing things in real life on instinct, so why not this? But using the Jedi mind trick without ever once hearing about it is completely unbelievable. I mean, even Goku had to take a few times to learn Ultra Instinct, and he can only defend, if we're still pulling from Dragon Ball. And once again, we're not referencing to supplementary material that came out after the fact. You can't patch plot holes in your movie with homework because the writer isn't talented enough to make your character believable, especially when that homework directly contradicts evidence we see in the movie.
In the latest desperate attempt to course correct, supplementary material was released to explain why certain characters were able to perform all these extraordinary feats. Specifically, they explained that Rey's piloting skills were the result of her spending her days practicing in an artificial training unit inside the crashed Star Destroyer on Jakku. If this were true, it would be acceptable and moderately interesting. However, after Rey and Finn escaped from the planet, Finn asked her, "How did you do that?" To which she responds, "I don't know," implying that the knowledge just came to her as if from the Force itself. Consider both Broly's, the bad one and the good one. Both of these characters resonate with their audiences because they are written and designed by passionate individuals. Broly's original creator, Takao Koyama, has gone on record to say that Broly is his most favorite character he has ever designed, and that he was, to quote, his baby, showing love and respect for both his character and the series lore. He wrote a twist into the Dragon Ball mythos that was both interesting and expansive. Despite being a one-note boring villain, the concept alone was respected. When writing the new Broly movie, series creator Akira Toriyama treated Broly with the utmost respect, giving him the same powers, intrigue, and everything that made Broly interesting while fixing the criticisms of the first incarnation, while of course fitting him in gracefully within the established canon. No other movie villain was given such treatment, not even the much cooler brother of Frieza, and that's in spite of the abundance of opportunities to add him into the new series. Here we have respect for our series and respect for the character, which in turn gives respect for the audience.
Dragon Ball Super Broly, written by Toriyama, understood how important Broly was to the fans and how significant of a change it would be to create another Saiyan-like character, especially one that would be an antagonist. They played with the idea in the Goku Black arc, but the theme of that storyline was meant to be more of a fallen god, dark messiah figure, rather than examining a Saiyan antagonist. Fans clamored for years to make Broly canon, and even the most outspoken haters loved the concept of a Saiyan antagonist that had a similar yet unique power to the heroes. Broly cut himself a strong niche in Dragon Ball fandom and consistently shows up in almost every video game from the classic SNES days all the way to the latest Dragon Ball FighterZ. Which brings us to the next segment of our alignment, which is the meta of these projects' creation. How have the creators of the new Star Wars movies treated their property, and how have they treated their audience? I would argue extremely poorly, to the point of disrespect. Now, I do have a slight confession here. Most of this script was written in late 2019 when the only Star Wars that we were given was the sequel trilogy, and The Mandalorian was still sort of in its infancy. So at the time, we've only had a trilogy of very divisive movies, an okay war movie, and a love it or hate it origin film that most people did not seem to love. At the time of this recording, the person at the helm of these projects was Kathleen Kennedy, and many, including myself, felt she was the sole reason for the decline of Star Wars before The Mandalorian. Diving into the corporate politics of what's happening at Lucasfilm would take a whole nother video, and frankly, I don't care enough to dive into it. Just know that this individual is the current president of Lucasfilm as of this recording, and was in charge of delegating everything to do with the direction of Star Wars. When George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney with the understanding that they would create another trilogy of movies, he created a set of outlines for those films that would have taken the series in a wildly different direction, focusing on the concept of the wheels of the Force. Do you guys remember that midichlorian fiasco in the prequel trilogy that everyone seems to have hated? Well, this is actually an extension of that idea. Basically speaking, the Whills are the gods of the Force. They're the source and physical embodiment of it. It's more complicated, and admittedly, I don't have all the information on it. Basically speaking, George Lucas wanted to expand his lore even further and delve deeper into the mythology of the universe. When he left Lucasfilm, he left Kathleen Kennedy in charge, one of his oldest assistants and producer of Star Wars that he admits was a friend. He was counting on her to push Disney's movies in the direction that he had in mind. Obviously, this didn't happen. For one reason or another, Disney elected to go in a completely different direction, completely throwing out Lucas's vision in favor of creating their own characters and story. Because I am not a Hollywood insider, I cannot say for certain why they did this. According to the most credible source I could find, the official reason was that they felt that these new movies would be too radically different from what Star Wars was, and they felt it would have alienated too many fans.
Even if we assume that this is true at face value, the new hands of Star Wars did not respect the original creator's ideas or concepts to implement them into the new trilogy. Can you imagine the outcry that would have happened if, say, Akira Toriyama took Broly and instead changed his species to an Arlean, or was for no reason at all a master of instant transmission, or used magic instead of ki while calling himself the legendary Super Saiyan? There would be riots within the Dragon Ball community. Even if you aren't a fanboy of Broly, the disrespect being shown to the beloved creation of someone who dedicated so much to the Dragon Ball property would at the very least perturb most fans. But that's exactly what's happening with Kathleen Kennedy. In an interview with Rolling Stone, Kennedy asked if the final entry in the Disney Star Wars sequel trilogy was a particularly hard nut to crack. She responded with, "Every one of these movies is a particularly hard nut to crack. There's no source material. We don't have comic books. We don't have 800-page novels. We don't have anything other than passionate storytellers who get together and talk about what the next iteration might be. You don't have to be a huge Star Wars fan to know that this is utter nonsense. Star Wars is a property that has been ongoing for literal decades. Countless books, comics, video games, TV series, and other material is available for reference."
Even if you don't have time to parse through or read through every piece of media, doesn't mean you can't do a quick Google search asking, what are the most popular Star Wars stories? Take a dive into Wikipedia and then steal and plunder concepts until you have something solid. Taking a note from Marvel, another Disney property that is wildly successful while still telling mostly original stories, you could absolutely steal elements and ideas from previous sources and create a satisfying movie experience.
Consider Endgame, perhaps the highest grossing Marvel movie of all time. They broke two major rules from the comics about the Infinity Stones. One, that the Infinity Stones can't destroy Infinity Stones. And two, Infinity Stones from another reality cannot affect your reality. Yet those movies did exactly that, and no one cared. In fact, they loved it. And that's because the MCU spent years lovingly crafting their own universe and put people in charge that apparently cared about the property, and gave proper respect to the fans and their wishes. The only movie of the MCU that drove any controversy or fan backlash on the level of the Star Wars sequel trilogy was Captain Marvel, and that was only after the lead actress Brie Larson decided to go out in public, attack fans, and disrespect the material, not to mention politicizing something that wasn't political. Even Black Panther, a movie that is drenched in political commentary, was received relatively well by fans. Don't disrespect your material and don't disrespect your fans.
After the huge success of Star Wars The Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams was replaced by series newcomer Rian Johnson, who then created The Last Jedi. Neither of these directors are untalented, nor do they not have ideas that are not intriguing and fun. I think I said that right. What I'm saying is, both of these directors have their good points. However, their philosophies in which they approach these movies inherently do not go together and should not be forced to coincide. J.J. Abrams famously uses a writing technique called the mystery box, which believes that raising a constant mystery for the audience is more important and more fun rather than the answer to said mystery. In his approach to storytelling, each answer to a previous question should introduce further mysteries. This creates an engaging storytelling device that keeps the watcher wanting more. Rian Johnson frequently likes to take other known tropes and turn them on their heads. He will present information and set up cliches that the audience usually understands, and then throws in a twist that changes the entire understanding of what you're watching. Individually, these styles can make for a fun and thrilling viewing experience, but combined, they are utterly frustrating to a viewer that makes someone feel like their time is being wasted and intelligence insulted. For example, In The Force Awakens, Rey's parentage and lineage is constantly called into question. Abrams crafted a story that has the viewer look into all clues left behind in his movies and all previous materials scrambling to find an answer. After all, a good mystery is one that has setup and payoff. The best mysteries are the ones that the audience can follow along with the main character. Then along comes Rian Johnson, and in The Last Jedi, he tells the characters, and by extension the audience, these questions don't matter. None of this matters. What matters in this individual moment is nothing. Then, after telling you all this, he pulls the rug out from under you and says, lol, actually, all of it matters. But it still doesn't. While the details of why they decided to switch directors will never be fully explained, the fact of the matter is that these changes were still made. You establish a story that took it in one direction with J.J. Abrams, and then immediately stopped, mocked what came before, and then left nothing for the sequel. If Rian Johnson or J.J. were fully left in charge of all three movies, it's unlikely this wouldn't have gotten out of hand. Rise of Skywalker was universally hated by fans and critics alike because it had to course-correct fan backlash from The Last Jedi and try to salvage what was left of the story while having nothing to move forward with.
It definitely didn't help that Johnson would later go on a man-baby tirade on Twitter, calling many of his outcriers man-babies. Even if he was addressing legitimate trolls in that regard, he then responds to legitimate criticisms, lumping it all as a giant mass of degenerates. Contrary to this, let's take a look at how Dragon Ball handles fan controversy. In Mexico, there was a huge fan gathering in stadiums, plazas, and other public places where fans would gather and watch the new episodes of Dragon Ball Super shortly after they were published. Originally, Toei issued a cease and desist order, mainly because these events were not officially sanctioned. Toei made some efforts towards damage control, but the damage was done. In response, Shunsuke Kikuchi, the composer in charge of the music in the 2018 Broly movie, created a tribute to these fans in his track Gogeta vs. Broly, mimicking the hype man that often accompanied these events. To summarize, Star Wars ignored the wishes of the original creator, gave no respect to the other material, disrespected fans, and gave a confused and messy set of movies driven by ego and laziness. Dragon Ball Super Broly, on the other hand, honored the original lore and vision of Akira Toriyama, gave respect to the spirit of Broly's character, respected the fan relationships with the character, and finally gave us a satisfying, self-contained story.
However, looking at this again, it's looking like Star Wars is learning from its mistakes. The Mandalorian, seasons both 1 and 2, have stories that are steeped in the series lore, drawing from all sorts of elements from the prequels to the sequels, and even references the really bad holiday specials. Either way, like I mentioned before, I originally wrote a lot of the script back in 2019, and let's face it, this isn't a Loading Crew video unless it's a day late and $1 short. My resolution this year is to produce more content like this, so what did you guys think? Leave your comments below if this take was hot enough for you, or if you felt like this wasn't quite what you're looking for.
If you would like further insight into the failings of the Disney Star Wars movies, I'd recommend checking out my video explaining why Rey is a Mary Sue.